Bloomberg Audio Studios.
It's a great pleasure to be joined by the President of Latvia. President Edgars Rinkevics is with us live from the United Nations in New York on this important day. And Mr. President, we welcome you to Bloomberg TV and radio. The President, in a news conference just a moment ago, as you were sitting down to talk with us on Bloomberg, said that NATO countries should shoot down aircraft entering their airspace, of course, referring to the Russian incursions on Polish airspace as well as Estonian airspace. Is your country prepared if that happens?
Well, actually, Latvia, as well as other Baltic states, are under the NATO air patrolling mission. So that kind of decision should be taken by NATO command. But I think that President Trump and other leaders who have expressed their views on this issue are right. If Russian aircrafts keep flying, keep violating our airspace, NATO's airspace, then the only way how to stop them is to show force. And from that perspective, I would say that we are going to push for more stringent NATO policy in this regard.
Interesting. I'd love if you have more details on those changes and a potential for increasing air defenses along the Russian border. Is there a way to deter Russia from flying these missions?
Yes, there is. Actually, we have two issues here. Number one, it's drones that have been flying into the Polish, Romanian, also Latvian territory. Mostly we have seen those kind of incursions as tests. And here more anti-drone defense is needed. Actually, that's a bit also the kind of race when it comes to technologies. Number two, it's what happened with Estonia. MiGs flying into the Estonian territory, and here, as I said, to some extent the Baltic states are in a very peculiar position because we do not have our fighters. Since we joined NATO back in 2004, there is so-called Baltic air policing mission. What has been decided that policing mission will become a full-fledged air defense mission. And then I think that rules of engagement need also to be upgraded in a way that if Russians continue, then yes, indeed, the opening of fire would be an alternative. Can we stop Russians? Yes, we have seen what happened with the Baltic Sea. A couple of months ago, we had many incidents with underwater infrastructure. When so-called Baltic Sentry mission started, more ships, NATO ships patrolling the Baltic Sea, all of a sudden the pattern changed. The problem with Russians is that they are going to stop incursions in the Baltic or in the NATO airspace if they see show of force. But at the same time, they are going to find other ways how actually to test and to challenge the alliance.
So are you essentially, President Rinkevics, describing a no-fly zone for Eastern Europe, for border nations that NATO would work together on? Is that how you defend the skies?
Not exactly no-fly zone. No-fly zone would mean that actually we stop flying all aircraft, civilian, friendly NATO aircraft.
Understood.
I'm advocating for much stringent defense policy of the alliance, as we just discussed.
I want to ask you about the idea of a drone wall. Baltic countries are apparently having this conversation, a system that would take down any drones that cross the border. Are you involved in those discussions? Could that be made reality?
Yes, indeed, we are talking about that. Indeed, we are learning a lot from Ukrainian experience, but of course we also see that development of technology at this time is so quick that actually it's quite challenging to find the right approach. But indeed, the Baltic nations or eastern flank nations are discussing also the drone wall, as well as actually counter mobility measures against any possible Russian incursion if that may happen.
I'm sure you heard the president's speech earlier, President Trump's speech before the United Nations. Mr. President, he spoke about the potential for secondary sanctions against Russia, but said he would only put them in place if European nations stopped buying Russian oil. What is your reaction to that?
I'm absolutely supporting that proposal by President Trump. Actually, Latvia, along other countries that are bordering Russia, have been advocating for stopping buying Russian oil and gas since 2022. We actually made that decision when Russians started their full-scale aggression back in February 2022. So from that point of view, I do believe that President Trump is right. I do believe that all European nations must stop buying Russian oil and gas, and they must stop financing Russian war machines. So from that point of view, there is a point in what President Trump said in his address to the United Nations General Assembly.
Well, what are you hearing, President, from your NATO allies who are in fact purchasing Russian oil? Will they make that commitment?
Well, I think that if there is a clear position from the United States, if other EU nations or NATO European allies do stop buying Russian oil and gas, and there is no alternative. It's US LNG. By the way, Latvia is buying currently around 75% of the United States liquefied natural gas. Then I think that those countries may change their mind, and I think that the position of the United States in this matter is very relevant. So I do hope that all capitals in Europe are hearing the statement from the United States at this point.
Well, there's a story coming out of the Pentagon here in Washington. The Department of Defense is pulling back on funding for programs on NATO's eastern flank, including the Baltic Security Initiative, which would impact your country. Are you hearing directly from the Pentagon on this? And can countries like yours make up the difference?
Well, we are in discussions with our colleagues in the United States Department of War. And at this point, I would say that we are very grateful to the United States for all the assistance the country has provided to Latvia since the establishment of our independence. But we are also working with the Congress, and I do hope that we are going to find the solution where we are going to continue this cooperation. Let me say that actually when it comes to the US aid in this regard, then we are mostly buying the US equipment, and also we are then financing that purchase also not only from US funds but also Latvian or the Baltic funds. So this is where we are in the process, so I can't confirm that the kind of final decision has been made. And I do understand the push from the United States when it comes to more financing, but let me remind the viewers of Bloomberg also that countries like Latvia currently spend almost 5% on defense of GDP because we understand what capabilities we need, and I do hope that also this message is going to be heard in US government as well.
Spoken like the president of a frontline nation sharing a border with Russia, certainly. I'm curious, Mr. President, what your thought was on the message today from President Trump. He spoke to the room. He said your countries are going to hell. Was that the message that you needed to hear today?
I think that the United Nations is a great place where different opinions, different views are being expressed. And I think that sometimes, frankly, I'm attending those UNGA meetings in different capacities as the foreign minister before I became president since 2009. And sometimes you will probably need to get kind of very strong language to wake up. But definitely I hope that we are going to find common language with everyone in the room when it comes to the critical issues of the global development, be it climate change or be it other issues. However, I think also that one thing that is currently an issue here with the United States is that this organization needs reform, be it UN Security Council. We see that when it comes to the war in Ukraine, or it used to be Syria a couple of years ago, this organization was not capable to deal with challenges that actually it was created for.
That's a very diplomatic answer, Mr. President. President Trump referred to many countries on the brink of destruction. Well, that's true. Due to their use of green energy, Does he have the wrong or the right idea there?
I think that this discussion about climate change and what should we do is now developing. And, from time to time we get into extremes. Sometimes we get into extreme that we are all going to die immediately, and then we do some policies that, in hindsight, seem to be not so clever, and then we probably change the tone. In my own country, we have now that debate as well. What should we do, and are we exaggerating? So from that point of view, I think that the climate change is real. The issue is how you deal with that, whether those policies we are agreeing are the right ones, whether windmills are the right answer. Back home, we have the same debate. I would actually be happy to continue that discussion, and probably in this kind of clash of opinions, we can probably find the right policy as well.
Yeah, interesting. Before you leave us, Mr. President, and get back to your meetings at the UN, I want to get back to where we started, and that is the looming threat from Russia, and specifically from Vladimir Putin. What is the message from your country, from you, to Vladimir Putin as he considers pushing the line, as we've been referring to it, in countries like Latvia? If he decides to fly into your airspace, if he sends drones or aircraft, what would be your warning ahead of that decision?
My warning would be learn from history, because pushing the envelope, crossing the line, at one point means that you are losing everything. And I think that the message that we are hearing from NATO allies, from President Trump, from President Erdogan, from other leaders of the alliance, are very, very clear messages. So don't even try.
President Edgars Rinkevics, the president of Latvia, with us live from the United Nations. The General Assembly underway now in New York. Mr. President, thank you for the insights and for spending time with us today on Bloomberg.